Он стоит, блядь, просто. Зачем его? Нахуя его здесь оставлять? Еще... Вообще, блядь. Я понял. Подсади, брат, подсади. Это кто, Лили Брокли? Это кто вообще, блядь? У них, блядь, все восхожники, нахуй.
Броклин, он нормально, он как Любик просто бегает. Он чисто просто...
Да, думаю...
Броклин, он не умеет играть вообще. Он чисто так... Он думает, ой, попаду, наверное, надеюсь. Чисто так. Он лаки обычно.
А ты откуда знаешь?
Про Броклина?
Да.
Так я смотрел за ним. Он чисто сзади не попал.
Блядь, какой-нибудь оружие, просто у меня SSG 8. Из-за него я играть не могу.
Yo. Hello. Yo.
У тебя есть какое-нибудь оружие? Я тебе сказал, что если у тебя есть авик, тебе отдай, пожалуйста. Можешь ты? Меня бомбардирует. Все, я пошел бомбу ставить. Вы аккуратно помогите. Соль-ля.
Эй.
Там кто, бля? Все не выгодно. Два чувака убивают, пацан, он вообще охуевший. подсади, да, брат. Подсади. Клон, подсади. Подсади. Подсади, блядь. Да. Ну как не знаю? Как не знаю? Он как узнал просто, блядь? Блядь, он как узнал, я даже не знаю, блядь. Вообще, блядь, я вышел, блядь, сразу. Она кто АФК, блядь? Прикрытие. На расслабленной секунде сразу мне в голову. Он как будто разнул нахуй. Ладно. Работа, по-моему, не... Вот там он. Вон там, вот здесь. Это что так грамотно не используем. Я не знаю. Пойди его пока.
Нахуя два молотого?
Я знаю, где они. На нашей базе, на нашу базу. А там есть кто-нибудь? Голову. Где они? На А. Не на А, на А. Какие-то араб на арабском говорит. Мне его научили, короче, первым словом. Он говорит.
Va. Я вот, да?
И нахуй выследил.
Я буду, я.
Hey, this is going to be the definitive guide to the Cisco settings. This will be your video settings, known as well as keybinds, FPS options, and everything else you wish the other settings to have. We'll start with the most simple thing you would think, which is aspect ratio and resolution. And this is one of those things, as many things are, that people think is all personal preference. And there is a large degree of personal preference, but that's not all it is. When you look at aspect ratio, you'll see most pros typically have a 4:3. Things are that people think is all personal preference, and there is a large degree of personal preference, but that's not all it is. When you look at aspect ratio, you'll see most pros typically have a 4:3 aspect where that people think is all personal preference, and there is a large degree of personal preference, but that's not. Is. When you look at aspect ratio, you'll see most pros typically have a 4:3 aspect ratio. I think that's more to do with comfort. They come from CS 1.6. Source, especially with bad PCs, you just play with what you're comfortable with. And technically, 4:3 it's a disadvantage.
Долго обязательно. As it cuts off the sides of your screens. However, it's not enough of a disadvantage, and you really shouldn't be getting shot from the sides all that often anyways, for it to make too big of a difference. One real change, though, is that when you look at 4:3 stretched, you have wider character models that move a lot faster. Stretch certainly is the king when you look at pro resolutions. Almost 70% of the people I've looked at use stretch. However, it is important to keep in mind that it can be a struggle to tell what type of peak people are going for when they're moving like a freaking F1 car. If you come from other games like Call of Duty or whatever else, you're probably going to be most comfortable with 16:9. However, there's no harm in trying out the other aspect ratios. When it comes to resolution, really what you're doing is you're going to try and downscale until you get consistent FPS. One of the benefits of playing on a slightly lower resolution, and you're going to see the most common resolution in the pro scene is actually 1280 by 960. It makes the game a little bit less cluttered. It feels a little bit more smooth when you don't have so much going on. And of course, it goes without saying alongside that you typically don't want to be using G-Sync or V-Sync when it comes to CS, because it's going to limit your FPS, and more FPS is better. Now, the more advanced settings are where you'd be thinking that things become personal preference. However, your video settings are actually where things really matter. If you look at global shadow quality, this setting is actually kind of important for a fairly weird reason. If you notice when you're on low, you're going to have shadows from players disappear at any reasonable range. However, if you have it on a higher setting, you'll you'll see that they last much longer, and this can be very significant in areas like mid or garage, where a player may be hiding in a smoke, but you can see their shadow on the ground. The second setting, model texture detail, is entirely graphical, so you're going to see a lot of players typically go for a high-low, high-high setting situation, because this is something that doesn't matter, and as CS players, we all know that extra 1 FPS is going to put me on the top of the scoreboard. Now, when I say high-low, high-high, higher effect detail and shader detail is going to allow you to see through Molotov smoke a lot more easily. It's also going to make your guns. These actually, in some specific scenarios, will make nades harder to see through. However, it's much more common to have problems looking through a Molotov, and those are more consistently going to be affected, and that's what really matters. I will note that despite these giving a slight competitive advantage, they do cost a lot of FPS, so unless you have a very fast computer, you may still want to keep them low. The other two settings you're probably looking at are MXAA and FXAA anti-aliasing, and I would generally recommend to keep these off. They don't necessarily cost that much FPS, but it's entirely graphical, so who cares? Now, boost layer contrast is actually a newer setting that you don't see in a lot of the other videos, which is very useful for seeing players. This should really have an insignificant effect on your FPS, however, I have heard people with older PCs have had issue with it, so definitely keep that in mind. Other than multi-core rendering, which is basically just a free FPS boost when you turn it on, everything else in there is entirely graphical, so if you're worried about your FPS, you may as well leave it off. I'll note that since I made this voiceover, someone made a benchmark of all of the CSGO settings and put it in a video. I'll link that video in the description, and if you're really interested in these extra settings, you can give that a look. When it comes to your audio settings, there's only a few things I really recommend, and these might be obvious, but I feel it necessary to say so. You want to make sure that you don't have surround sound on. You should be playing stereo, either stereo speakers or headphones, and you should definitely be having 3D audio on. As well, you want to make sure that you have the 10-second music on. I've heard people disagree with this. It seems a little bit crazy to me that someone would disagree with this. However, you want to know when there's 10 seconds left, especially for long diffuses. If you're a loser and don't buy it,
I'm not playing one-on-one.
Game settings is you want to have show location and equipment enabled. This is something that was added somewhat late in the CS cycle, and it gives you a huge advantage being able to simply see where your teammates are at a glance rather than looking where they are and then asking what their utility is. It's a very simple advantage that you definitely want to employ. Along with that, you want to make sure you're actually looking at your mini-map settings. This is something a lot of people overlook. However, you usually want to zoom it out a little bit so that you can see your teammates on the other side of the map and adjust accordingly in your positioning. However, it can be kind of tough sometimes in very specific scenarios to do something like find the bomb in a smoke if your radar is too zoomed out. So what I recommend is having a fairly zoomed out standard radar and having a keybind that toggles your radar to be more zoomed in these specific scenarios. The command to do so is on the screen here as well as in the description, so you can just use that and it makes your life a whole lot easier. Now for crosshair and view model, this is obviously something I've got to mention, but is really personal preference. However, you will see some consistency throughout the high level and scenes. When it comes to the pro scene, basically everyone uses a small static crosshair, no dot. As well, pretty much everyone seems to play on classic view model. Now, the crosshair is something that makes a whole lot of sense. If you're very used to CS, you don't need to know when you're inaccurate, you simply know it intuitively, and you want to just have the crosshair as a reference. When you're newer to the game, people focus on the crosshair a lot. However, when you're very experienced, you're really
Получай двойно.
What the fuck?
However, it is important to keep in mind that it can be a struggle to tell what 50 people are going through when they're feeling other E's to your else is probably going to be most comfortable.
What the fuck?
And really what you're doing is you're going to try and downscale to get consistent FPS. One of the benefits of playing on a slightly lower resolution, and you're going to see the most common resolution in the pro scene is actually 1280 by 60. It makes the game a little bit less cluttered. It feels a little bit more smooth when you don't have so much going on. And of course, it goes without saying alongside that you typically don't want to be using G-Sync when it comes to CS because it's going to limit your FPS, and more FPS is better. Now, the more advanced settings are where you're thinking that things become personal preference. However, your video settings are actually where things really matter. If you look at shutter quality, this is actually kind of important for a really weird reason. If you notice, you'll see they last much longer. That is going to be very significant in areas like mid or quad, where they're maybe hiding in a scope. You'll see there's seconds that in model texture detail is entirely graphical. So you're going to see a lot of players typically go for a high-low, high stick situation. Setting, you'll see they last significant in areas like mid or battles where players disappear and are actually where things go.
The heck?
Выруби, блядь.
Jatkan puuta. En makita.